If there's one thing that FNaF fans can pretty much universally agree upon, it's the inciting incident of the FNaF series. No matter which theorist, let's player, or regular fan you ask, the answer will almost always be the same: the missing children's incident. What is the missing children's incident? Well, at an unconfirmed point in time, 5 children were lured into the back room of a Freddy Fazbear's pizza establishment by a man dressed in a bright yellow suit. This man is William Afton, and these 5 victims would end up going on to possess the 5 original animatronics that we see in the first game. And that, ladies and gentle friends, is where the FNaF story started. Not literally, mind you, since we know other events in the timeline had to take place first, but with much of the story being contained in the first game of the series, it became the first real mystery to crack. And crack it did. But before I can get into talking about this game, I need a refresher, something new to sink my greasy mitts into. I can only talk about some games for so long before my eyes start to melt, which is why I'm not only proud, but also relieved to announce this video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Yes, that raid. Raid Shadow Legends is a mobile RPG that you can play on your Android or iOS devices. It features console-quality graphics, a world filled with mysteries and wonders, and a brilliant battling system. This game, in short, feels like an epic story that fits in your pocket. Raid just recently celebrated its 4-year anniversary, and if you ask me, anniversaries are meant for partying. And not just partying, dinner partying. Who am I inviting? Well, my guests are all going to be orcs, because who knows how to party better than an orc? Let's bring Galek, Zargala, Vrask, and Tuhak. Just lay off the axe throwing. I specifically picked Galek and Zargala because I believe that those two would know how to carve up a turkey, Thanksgiving style. As for Vrask and Tuhak, well, what can I say other than I just feel like they'd really stir up some interesting conversations at the dinner table, specifically regarding different battle strategies. If you want to invite these guests for yourself, you can try summoning them at the tavern. If you want your champions to be even stronger, then be sure to grind out Raid's expansive campaign and raise their levels through XP to take on bigger foes. After dinner, we're hitting the new live arena raids, PvP battles where you, the players, choose which champions can and can't join you and become the ultimate champion. But it's not just for fun, these battles will feature brand new artifact sets, void fragments for a legendary champion, and special live arena crests for use at the Great Hall. If you haven't played Raid yet, what are you waiting for? Download this game and use my link in the description to get Kellen the Shrike, an epic champion, as well as several other beginner bonuses. Install Raid now, and let's reach our install goal. So bring your best, and I'll be seeing you on the battlefield. Over time, we've heard bits and pieces of lore added, teased here and there, and a lot more dead folks who might be in the way of solving this mystery. And this got me wondering, what exactly is the missing children's incident? Sure, we have a basic idea of what happened, but when did it happen? How did it happen? Why did it happen? Well, I have some thoughts that you might want to listen to. So let's begin. The first important mystery to solve regarding the missing children's incident is actually in finding out if it's the missing children's incident or a missing children's incident. Throughout the series, we've seen a lot of kids die, and we know some of them were simply not affiliated with this missing children's incident thing. For example, Charlie. Charlie, although she's one of William's victims, is never included in the missing children's incident list of victims because she had to have died on her own, and had to have died alone. How about Elizabeth? Well, virtually the same. The crying child? Absolutely not everyone knows what happened to him. So while we have some idea of who's not a part of the missing children's incident, do we know who is? Yes. In the true ending to FNaF 6, we get their names. Susie, who we're told in a Fazbear Fright story is the one possessing Chica, Gabriel, Jeremy, and Fritz. It's never confirmed which of these 3 possess which of the remainder animatronics, but I see most fans attribute Gabriel to Freddy, Jeremy to Bonnie, and Fritz to Foxy. There's also an obscured gravestone that we can assume is covering up the name of Golden Freddy, but this is the only time we've ever seen anything like this. Although it's never outright stated, because, well, why would it be? It seems to be implied that although William Afton had a lot of victims, there's only really one missing children's incident. This is even supported in the games themselves. In FNaF Help Wanted's Curse of Jedbear DLC, you can find 7 tombstones surrounding a glitching purple one, indicating that these 7 tombstones would be Afton's victims. That means one set of 5 victims for the missing children's incident, plus 2 others, which I'm willing to bet are the puppet and Elizabeth. Part of me wants to say the crying child is one of them, but it's never actually confirmed what ended up happening to the crying child's spirit. It's entirely possible that the crying child isn't included here because his spirit never moved on to possess an animatronic. He simply died. But theorizing aside, what this tells us is that most likely William only ever killed 5 kids together once. I know some people like to propose the toy animatronics are haunted, but I generally just don't believe that. Kind of. For starters, given the way the FNaF 1 cast are possessed because they literally have the kids' dead bodies inside of them, it makes me wonder how exactly someone's putting a kid inside Mangle. That sounded wrong. Or more pressing to me, there's only 4 toy animatronics. What would the 5th child have been stuffed into? Balloon Boy? I mean, he's a portly little guy, but I don't think anyone's fitting as child inside him either. I've just never liked the toys being possessed theory, but I do kind of have my own alternative idea I'll mention later. But for now, minigames. There are 2 separate minigames that could point to the toys being a second set of victims, those being the Foxy Go 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 minigame and the Save Them minigame. These 2 minigames both show us what we can assume is a missing children's incident going down. In the former, Foxy runs in to see 5 dead kids together. In Save Them, which we know takes place in the FNaF 2 location, Freddy wanders around and sees the bodies of 5 dead kids all separated. So this has led some debate as to what actually happened. Are these 2 separate incidents? I don't really think so. I think these might just be 2 halves of the same incident, or multiple iterations of the same incident, just meant to scare players. The biggest piece of evidence showing that these are 2 separate missing children's incidents is in Foxy. In Foxy Go Go Go, it seems that Foxy is being used, whereas in FNaF 2, we know he's out of commission. But here's the thing, the phone guy in FNaF 2 mentions that when this place opened up, they tried to use these old animatronics, but scrapped them because they were ugly and scared the kids.
The idea at first was to repair them. They even started retrofitting them with some of the newer technology, but they were just so ugly, you know? And the smell.
We might even see this during Foxy Go Go Go, as one of the kids' faces the second time Foxy runs through is sad and unhappy, unlike the other kids. Sure, this could be because he saw the purple guy, but it's just as likely that they just don't like Foxy. But then, what about Save Them? Well, what about Save Them? All we really see here is 5 dead bodies laid out in the FNaF 2 restaurant. Does this necessarily mean that they're a different set of kids than the first? I don't really think so. It's possible, but I think unlikely, since we never see or hear anything about the supposed second set again. Of course, that's assuming one big thing, that these minigames are meant to be taken as literally as possible. I shouldn't have to explain why that's a bad thing to do, but basically, these minigames, like any other piece of the FNaF story, are open to interpretation. They can basically be used as evidence for either side, but in this instance, I'm in the camp that believes that a missing children's incident did happen at the FNaF 2 location, but it was the missing children's incident. Let me explain. Without a doubt, 5 kids died at the FNaF 2 location, which is why it's being put under investigation towards the end of FNaF 2.
Hello? What on earth are you doing there? Didn't you get the memo? The place is closed down, at least for a while. Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. Now none of them are acting right.
This means that William definitely killed 5 kids here. However, since we don't really have a solid reason to believe there are more than 7 victims in total, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that this is probably our one and only missing children's incident. So William kills the kids and stuffs them into the old animatronics from the first ever Freddy's establishment. Why would he do this? Well, he needed somewhere to hide the bodies, somewhere where no one would ever think to look. I believe this happened before the actual withering took place, as when the puppet gives one of the dead kids a Bonnie mask, it still has its face attached. The puppet then allowed these dead kids to possess the robots, but that's not all. The mechanics gave up on making these older models appeal to kids, or maybe just as likely, they found out what William did. Either way, these animatronics could not be seen by the general public anymore, and thus they were locked away in parts and service. However, there was further damage to be done. There's an old FNaF 2 teaser that still kinda gets to me a little. The line, "something borrowed, something new," specifically in referring to Withered Bonnie and Toy Bonnie.
By now I'm sure you've noticed the older models sitting in the back room. Those are from the previous location, and we just use them for parts now.
I think the implication here is obvious. Parts of Withered Bonnie were borrowed and turned into something new. Toy Bonnie. So in a weird way, the two are linked. Is it possible then that both are possessed by the same spirit? Hell, this wouldn't even be the last time we see something like this anyway. Enter Fazbear Frights, the book series I know every person ever loves. These books tell us a lot in terms of missing kids, but for our sake, we're only going to be talking about a couple stories. Let's start with You're the Band, as this story backs up my personal theory regarding the toys. In this story, a child receives a Freddy Fazbear mask as a gift for his birthday, only to start behaving strangely and telling people he was at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza before it closed down, even though he was way too young for that to be possible. Eventually, a security guard named Mike arrives and helps the kid and his mom out by bringing the Freddy mask back to the pizzeria. He puts it on the boy while he's singing on stage in Freddy's position, only for the real Freddy to then take his head back and keep on singing. In this instance, we see very blatantly that an animatronic is capable of possessing things that used to be a part of its original body. So, if, say, Toy Bonnie were made using some of Withered Bonnie's parts, such as pieces of the endoskeleton, then there's a solid chance that animatronic would be possessed by the spirit inside Withered Bonnie as well. All of this to say that's my most basic interpretation of what I think the missing children's incident was, and how it went down. However, there is some contradicting information we'll see when we dive further into Fazbear Frights, as well as some odd consistencies. So let's start with the year of the missing children's incident. I've theorized it happened at the FNaF 2 location, which puts it in the year 1987 since that's the only year it was open. However, in Fazbear Frights, the year it happens is 1985, based on the story Into the Pit. Into the Pit follows Oswald, a kid who, when visiting his local pizzeria, finds a ball pit. When he goes into the ball pit, he emerges in the year 1985 and actually witnesses the book version of the missing children's incident take place. I say the book version because this one doesn't really seem like a missing children's incident. This one has parents screaming and running away, and there's no stuffing the kids into suits. The killer this time around, who most likely isn't even William Afton, displayed them out for people to see. The worst part? There's not even 5 kids, there's 6. This isn't the missing children's incident. This is the dead children's incident, if you ask me. So much of it goes against the core idea of what actually happened during the missing children's incident that I just don't see it as a strong parallel as other people do. So between 87 and 85, I'm sticking with 87. What else do we know? Well, we have a general idea of how the kids followed William into the back room. In Pizzeria Sim, we actually get some idea of how this happens, with the character of Susie being lured away by Spring Bonnie. How does it happen? Well, her game of Fruity Maze becomes corrupted, and she starts seeing visuals of her dead dog. Well, if I had to guess, William probably hacked into that arcade cabinet and intentionally caused this change in order to torment Susie, wear her down emotionally, and make it easier for him to follow her. Although it's unknown how the other kids were lured away, this actually ties into another theory of mine, that being that Afton chose his victims. If you pay attention throughout the FNaF series, you'll notice there's a trend in people who William Afton manipulates, that being those who are emotionally damaged in some way. For example, Vanessa. Most likely the reason Afton chose her for the digital consciousness transfer was because she already had a pretty tragic home life. Her parents were divorced, her mother most likely dead, and her father having tricked her into siding with him. As far as Afton could be concerned, Vanessa would have been very easy to drag along with him as his own reluctant follower. And as we see with Susie, it's much the same. She's in an agitated, broken emotional state. She's ready to listen to anyone who promises to get her dog back. I think what we see with the Fruity Maze machine is Afton abducting Susie, but it also tells us why he abducted her. Afton wanted sad victims, victims who could potentially come back as robots. Id's Fantasy has a great video dissecting sister location's placement in the timeline, but one thing that stuck out to me is a reasoning for why the missing children's incident happened in the first place. Afton wanted to study these resurrected robots. I think that might be true, but if it is true, then he'd need a methodology, i.e., he needed to figure out how to recreate what happened to the puppet, his first victim. So he picked kids who were really going through some kind of rough time. He picked Susie because of her dead dog. He picked the Midnight Motorist kid because he lived in an abusive household. He picked Jeremy because, well, we don't really know. Not much is known about the dead kids aside from Susie, but given what we do know about Afton's chosen victims, this makes the most sense to me. I guess in summation, the missing children's incident is possible to trace down and figure out just what happened, although it's intentionally one of the tougher mysteries to solve, because figuring out just what happened to them would be telling us a whole lot more of the story than we're probably prepared to handle right now. But anyway, this is just what I think happened. I'd be lying if I said that everything you've heard here is 100% canonical information. Although I've tried to keep things within reason, I will admit to my own biases towards my own theories, so if you disagree, I don't mind. This is one interpretation out of potentially thousands, millions. Either way, I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and be sure to subscribe. That's all out of me. Peace.